Imagine spending your entire life waiting for life to be fair. You follow the rules, you honor your commitments, you trust in justice, and yet every time you play by the rules, someone else takes the reward. History is full of men who demanded fairness and lost everything because the world doesn't operate on morality or sentiment. Machiavelli, the master of strategy and ruthless truth, understood this better than anyone. Expecting fairness is a trap. It weakens your mind, drains your energy, and makes you vulnerable. In this video, you will learn why demanding fairness keeps you weak and how to break free to gain true power in a world that never promises justice. 1. The illusion of fairness. From the moment we are born, society conditions us to expect fairness. Parents tell us that if we study hard, we will succeed. Teachers insist that honesty and effort are rewarded. Friends promise loyalty. And the world around us whispers the comforting lie that good deeds will be recognized, that justice will prevail. We are raised to believe that life operates according to a moral balance, a system in which right is rewarded and wrong is punished. Yet reality has little patience for our moral constructs. Life does not tally points or issue receipts for virtue. Fortune does not pause to ensure equity. Human nature is indifferent to our sense of fairness, and history is littered with the wreckage of those who assumed the universe would operate by such convenient rules. The moment you anchor your expectations to fairness, you place yourself in a vulnerable position. You become reactive instead of proactive, waiting for justice that may never arrive, hoping for reciprocity that is rarely offered. Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone in history. He observed that the universe is neither kind nor moral, and human beings are driven primarily by self-interest, fear, and desire. To believe in fairness is to hand the advantage to those who do not share your illusions. Consider the man who honors every promise, every contract, every unspoken social rule, while others cheat, betray, and manipulate to get ahead. By clinging to fairness, he believes he will be shielded from harm, that morality will protect him, but instead he becomes predictable, exploitable, and weak. The world does not pause for ideals. It rewards decisiveness, strategy, and courage, the qualities that allow one to act effectively regardless of who honors the rules and who does not. Waiting for fairness is the slowest path to ruin. Acting without it is the path to mastery. To truly understand the illusion of fairness, we must examine the psychological trap it creates. When you insist on fairness, your mind becomes preoccupied with what is owed to you, what you deserve, and what others should do. You waste time and energy calculating moral debts, waiting for others to act in accordance with your expectations. Every hesitation is a loss, every delay an opportunity stolen. Meanwhile, those who understand reality move swiftly, take risks, and seize advantage. They operate in a world stripped of illusions, unbound by sentiment or idealism. Their power comes not from virtue, but from action, the understanding that fairness is irrelevant to survival and success.
History provides countless examples. Think of great generals and leaders who rose above the weak by ignoring fairness entirely. Caesar did not wait for Rome to recognize his virtue. He acted decisively and claimed power. Lorenzo de' Medici did not demand that rivals behave justly. He maneuvered, manipulated, and controlled the game of politics with unflinching pragmatism. Even in modern times, the most successful entrepreneurs and leaders do not wait for recognition, gratitude, or equitable treatment. They act. They take what is necessary, anticipate deception, and adapt to circumstances, knowing that fairness is rarely on anyone's side. Waiting for the world to play by moral rules is a trap, a subtle, seductive trap that keeps the cautious weak and the bold strong. Rejecting the fantasy of fairness is not a call to cynicism. It is a call to clarity and strength. When you release your expectation that life owes you something, you free yourself from the chains of disappointment and stagnation. You no longer hesitate, no longer calculate what others should do. Instead, you focus on what you can do. You cultivate decisiveness, sharpen your strategy, and seize opportunity without hesitation. In a world governed by self-interest, those who act without waiting for fairness dominate those who cling to illusions. Strength, influence, and results are reserved for the few who recognize this truth and embody it fully. In the end, fairness is a luxury, not a law. The moment you demand it, you signal weakness, you slow your progress, and you invite exploitation. The strong understand that results matter far more than morality, that action outweighs expectation, and that clarity of purpose is the ultimate protection. By rejecting the illusion of fairness, you begin to operate in the world as it truly is, a world indifferent to justice, but responsive to power, strategy, and relentless action. Only then can you move with confidence, seize opportunity, and cultivate the kind of strength that cannot be undermined by the fickleness or indifference of others. Insisting on fairness is, at its core, a surrender of power. When you demand that others act according to your standards, honor your agreements, or acknowledge your effort, you are, in effect, giving them the keys to your life. You are allowing the actions, whims, and morality of others to dictate your outcomes. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He saw that the world does not move according to principle or justice. It moves according to self-interest, survival, and advantage. To expect fairness is to tie your fate to the unreliable behavior of others, to hope that they will act in ways that align with your ideals rather than their needs. This is not merely naive, it is dangerous. By anchoring your expectations to fairness, you create dependency, a reliance on forces beyond your control. You wait for others to validate your worth, to honor your contribution, or to return your loyalty, while the world marches on, indifferent to your ideals.
The strong man does not wait. He does not hope that fairness will shield him from harm or reward him for virtue. He acts decisively, regardless of who supports him and who opposes him. He understands that the world owes him nothing. He takes what is necessary, adapts to obstacles, and manipulates circumstances to his advantage. Expecting fairness slows your movement and dulls your resolve. It makes you hesitant, calculating, and cautious, waiting for signals that may never come. Meanwhile, others act, move forward, and seize the advantages that you have forfeited while standing still, waiting for justice. To demand fairness is to place your future in the hands of those who may never recognize it, and to tie your progress to the morality of those who often have none. Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized the danger of reliance on others for validation or protection. In his observations of history, he saw rulers undone by misplaced trust and expectation. Those who believed in fairness waited for allies to keep promises, for rivals to play by rules, or for circumstance to reward them for virtue. And yet, time and again, they were betrayed, outmaneuvered, and destroyed. Dependence on fairness creates a fatal passivity. It blinds you to the hard truths of human nature, that people act according to self-interest, fear, and desire, not morality. When you base your strength on others' sense of justice, you forfeit the one thing no one can take from you, your own decisive action. The illusion of fairness also limits your flexibility. When you demand that the world act fairly, you bind yourself to a rigid framework of expectations. You react when reality does not conform, instead of shaping it proactively. Every disappointment becomes a wound that slows you down. Every betrayal, a shock that drains your energy. In contrast, the strong man sees fairness as irrelevant. He plans for resistance,
anticipates betrayal, and moves with the confidence that comes from knowing his actions are the primary source of his success. By refusing to wait for fairness, he conserves mental energy, sharpens his focus, and maximizes his influence over outcomes. Chasing fairness is a subtle form of weakness because it externalizes power. You are effectively telling the world, "I am only strong if you are just." This is a position no wise person or powerful ruler would ever accept. Strength comes from internal control, from decisive action, and from the courage to operate in a world that does not honor ideals. By shifting your focus away from fairness and onto results, you reclaim your autonomy. You stop being a pawn in the game of others and become the player who determines the rules, adapts to the moves of adversaries, and enforces outcomes without waiting for permission or recognition. Weak men demand fairness. Strong men enforce results. And the difference lies entirely in action, perception, and relentless self-reliance.
Ultimately, expecting fairness is a trap disguised as virtue. It seduces the mind with promises of justice and reward, while in truth it makes you predictable, exploitable, and weak. The moment you accept that fairness is optional, unreliable, and irrelevant to survival, you begin to act with freedom, precision, and strength. You no longer waste time negotiating with morality that doesn't exist. You no longer hesitate for validation that will never arrive. The strong man does not plead with the world to behave justly. He commands results through action, strategy, and an unflinching understanding of reality. In abandoning the illusion of fairness, you step into power, clarity, and self-mastery, leaving weakness behind as an artifact of your past illusions. 3. The trap of moral debt. Fairness is not only an illusion, it often becomes a trap in the form of moral debt. From an early age, we are taught that keeping promises, honoring commitments, and acting morally will bind others to us, that they will recognize our virtue and act accordingly. You owe me, we say, or we hope others think it silently, assuming that morality or social expectation will compel them to reciprocate. Machiavelli saw the danger in this reliance. Morality is subjective. Conscience is unreliable. People act primarily in accordance with self-interest, ambition, or fear, not the abstract ideals of justice. When you anchor your power or your success to the hope that others will honor your sense of right, you are building on quicksand. You may believe that recognition, repayment, or loyalty is inevitable, but the world has no obligation to satisfy your expectations. The stronger lesson Machiavelli teaches is that dependency on moral debt is weakness disguised as principle. History is full of examples where moral debt led to downfall. Consider leaders who trusted allies too readily, expecting loyalty in exchange for favors, protection, or concessions. They assumed that reciprocity was a given, that promises carried weight beyond self-interest. Yet those they trusted betrayed them, exploiting every vulnerability and turning expectation into opportunity. In business, the same principle applies. Those who assume clients, partners, or competitors will act fairly often lose to those who act strategically and ruthlessly. Moral debt is a weapon wielded against those who rely on it because it creates predictability. When you expect fairness or loyalty, your actions become guided by hope rather than strategy. The world exploits that hope with merciless efficiency. The subtlety of this trap lies in its appeal to virtue. We want to believe that honor, fairness, and reciprocity exist because it comforts us. It makes life seem ordered, predictable, and controllable. But Machiavelli warns that belief in moral debt blinds the mind to harsh reality. Those who count on it hesitate to act aggressively, they overvalue promises, and they underestimate deceit. They anchor their strength in the behavior of others rather than their own capacity to shape outcomes. Every delay, every reliance on someone's obligation diminishes decisiveness and cedes initiative to the cunning.
The man who trusts a moral debt waits for validation. The man who acts independently shapes his own destiny. In a world governed by ambition and self-interest, the former is always weaker.
Breaking free from the trap of moral debt requires a shift in perception. You must stop measuring your actions by what others owe you and start measuring them by results, influence, and adaptability. Understand that promises are conditional, loyalty is fragile, and fairness is fleeting. Every reliance on moral debt is a gamble where the odds are stacked against you. The strongest individuals, leaders, warriors, entrepreneurs, do not gamble on the honesty or conscience of others. They act with anticipation, strategy, and ruthless clarity, preparing for betrayal while not allowing it to slow their progress. They do not demand repayment. They create advantage, maneuver circumstances, and ensure success through their own skill, foresight, and action. Even in personal relationships, the trap of moral debt is evident. We give time, loyalty, and trust with the expectation of reciprocity, only to find ourselves disappointed, ignored, or betrayed. By internalizing this harsh truth, by understanding that human behavior is driven by interest and self-preservation rather than fairness, you liberate yourself. You no longer wait for recognition, repayment, or justice. Instead, you focus on influence, capability, and results. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. Strength comes not from depending on others to honor debt, but from relying on your own ability to act decisively and to anticipate outcomes with precision. Ultimately, the trap of moral debt is a prison of expectation. Those who cling to it tie their hands behind their backs, giving others leverage over their destiny. Machiavelli teaches that power resides in action, preparation, and ruthless awareness of reality. By rejecting moral debt as a source of strength, you reclaim autonomy. You act without hesitation, without dependency, and without illusions about what the world owes you. You shape circumstances rather than waiting for others to uphold your ideals. In freeing yourself from this trap, you step into the kind of power and decisiveness that guarantees results, regardless of fairness, loyalty, or morality. The world may not honor your virtue, but it cannot stop the one who acts with clarity, strategy, and relentless self-reliance. 4. Ruthless action beats fairness. Ruthlessness is often misunderstood. Many confuse it with cruelty, aggression, or malice. But Machiavelli's concept of ruthlessness is far more subtle, far more strategic. It is the courage to act decisively in a world that does not reward fairness, to move boldly when others hesitate, and to seize opportunity without waiting for moral sanction. Life rarely waits for the just man. It does not pause for agreements to be honored or promises to be kept. Those who cling to fairness watch as opportunities slip through their fingers, paralyzed by the expectation that others will act ethically. The truly strong, however, understand that outcomes, not ideals, define success. They are ruthless not for the sake of harm, but for the sake of results, influence, and survival in a world governed by self-interest.
Fairness lose contracts, markets, and influence to those willing to act decisively. In politics, rulers who wait for morality to dictate alliances are overthrown by rivals who anticipate, manipulate, and act without illusion. Even in personal life, waiting for fairness or reciprocity leads to frustration, wasted energy, and stagnation. Ruthlessness, in the Machiavellian sense, means understanding that the world is impartial. Human nature is self-interested, and waiting for justice is a slow form of defeat. The moment you act decisively, you claim control, assert dominance, and shape outcomes in your favor. Results, not fairness, are the currency of power. Ruthless action requires a deep understanding of strategy. It is not blind aggression or impulsive cruelty. It is calculated, anticipatory, and precise. Machiavelli admired leaders and generals who moved swiftly, who anticipated betrayal, and who struck before hesitation could paralyze them. They understood that fairness was irrelevant and that opportunity favors the bold.
To act ruthlessly is to recognize the limits of moral expectation and to leverage circumstance, perception, and timing. Every hesitation, every appeal to fairness is a gift to those willing to act without sentiment. The strong man does not plead with the world to behave. He bends it to his will through clarity, foresight, and decisive action. Psychologically, ruthless action frees the mind from expectation and disappointment. When you stop relying on fairness or the morality of others, you no longer waste mental energy on hope or resentment. Instead, your thoughts focus entirely on strategy, execution, and adaptation. You anticipate resistance, prepare for betrayal, and maneuver proactively rather than reactively. This mindset creates confidence, decisiveness, and resilience. You no longer stumble when the world fails to honor your ideals, because your power is not dependent on fairness. It is dependent on your capacity to act, to anticipate, and to enforce results. Even on a personal level, ruthless action transforms relationships and social dynamics. Those who wait for fairness are often manipulated, taken for granted, or undermined. They become predictable, vulnerable, and weak. Those who act decisively command respect and shape perception. They establish boundaries, enforce rules, and create environments where others understand that results are non-negotiable. Machiavelli's insight is timeless. It is not enough to hope for fairness or moral recognition. One must act boldly, anticipate deception, and ensure that personal objectives are achieved regardless of external morality.
Ultimately, ruthless action is the antidote to weakness created by the illusion of fairness. It is a mindset, a discipline, and a strategy that allows you to operate in a world where justice is optional and self-interest is dominant. By prioritizing results, taking initiative, and moving decisively, you free yourself from dependence on others' morality. Weak men wait, hoping for fairness. Strong men act, ensuring that fairness, or the lack thereof, does not determine their outcomes. Strength, influence, and mastery are reserved for those willing to embrace ruthlessness in the pursuit of tangible results. For those who understand that fairness is a luxury the world cannot and will not guarantee. 5. Embrace reality. Stop waiting. The final truth Machiavelli imparts is simple, brutal, and liberating. Stop waiting for fairness. Life is indifferent. Human nature is self-interested. Fortune is impartial. Strength does not come from hoping that the world will act justly, nor from pleading for recognition, repayment, or validation. The weak are perpetually trapped in anticipation, measuring their worth by the actions or inactions of others. They tie their hands, slow their progress, and exhaust their energy waiting for a morality that rarely exists outside their imagination. To embrace reality is to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. This brutal clarity is the foundation of power, decisiveness, and true self-mastery. Embracing reality requires abandoning the comforting illusions of fairness and reciprocity. It requires understanding that waiting for justice is a luxury the world will never provide. Those who cling to it remain weak, predictable, and reactive. Meanwhile, the man who internalizes this truth becomes proactive, strategic, and unstoppable. He anticipates betrayal, plans for resistance, and acts decisively without expectation. He understands that power resides not in moral validation, but in the ability to enforce results, to adapt to circumstance, and to command outcomes through clarity and action. By ceasing to wait for fairness, you reclaim your energy, your focus, and your agency, making yourself untouchable by the indecisions or whims of others. Consider the lessons from history and human behavior. Leaders who waited for fairness faltered, while those who acted with clarity thrived. Caesar did not demand loyalty. He seized it through calculated action. Machiavelli's princes succeeded not because their subjects acted morally, but because they understood human nature, anticipated deceit, and moved decisively. The strongest individuals do not ask the world to comply with ideals. They create leverage, shape perception, and enforce outcomes. By aligning your mindset with reality rather than expectation, you position yourself above those who remain trapped in the fantasy of fairness. The practical implications are profound. Stop negotiating with morality that does not exist. Stop waiting for others to do what they should do. Your progress, influence, and success are determined by your actions, not by the ethics or promises of others. Each moment spent hoping for fairness is a moment lost, a step behind those who act boldly. By embracing reality, you act with clarity, efficiency, and confidence. You anticipate obstacles, exploit opportunity, and enforce results without delay. In doing so, you free yourself from frustration, disappointment, and wasted energy, transforming weakness into strength and indecision into mastery.
Psychologically, this shift is transformative. Accepting the world as it is liberates the mind from expectation, allowing full focus on action, strategy, and influence. You stop resenting betrayal, ignoring failure, or hoping for justice. You simply act. Every choice is guided by foresight and decisive execution. You no longer tether your strength to the moral behavior of others. Instead, you build internal power that cannot be shaken, a resilience that thrives regardless of circumstance, and a capacity for action that ensures results even in the absence of fairness. Ultimately, embracing reality and abandoning the demand for fairness is the final step toward liberation and mastery. Weak men wait, complain, and hope. Strong men observe, adapt, and act. They understand that fairness is a luxury the world cannot provide, and that strength, influence, and survival depend entirely on their willingness to act decisively. By releasing the expectation of justice, you reclaim control over your life, your decisions, and your outcomes. You step into the world fully prepared, fully aware, and fully capable of shaping reality to your advantage. In this ruthless clarity lies the power Machiavelli revered, a power untouched by sentiment, unbound by expectation, and guaranteed by nothing other than your decisive action.